Love the deal for Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. I do too. I love the deal for Bulls too.
Yeah, but what are the Pelicans doing?
You know what's not smart, Bryan?
I was about to say, speaking of the Knicks, so was that the seg you were looking for?
Well, maybe not the Knicks specifically, but you know what? Let's just get into the segment that you have entitled Dumb Teams.
Dumb Team. So here's my thing about the Knicks.
Yes, go ahead.
They have Fournier. They bring him back. They signed him. I think it was 4 years, 78 million.
Yeah,
or up to 78 million was the phrasing.
I didn't see that. I thought it was 78.
It might. Yeah. Let's see. I have a link from Woj here. I know it's a 4th-year team option, so that helps.
That's not bad. Yeah.
It says it could be as worth as 78 million. So,
okay.
So we'll see how the exact breakdown is. But
right.
Either way, you get Evan Fournier. Otherwise, the Knicks go into the offseason with the ability to create $50 million in cap space. Yep. They make all these moves on draft night, trade down from 19, trade down from 21. That seems to suggest they're doing as much as they can to maximize their cap space. They sign Fournier and otherwise just run it back. They sign Alec Burks to a 3-year, $30 million deal. Nerlens Noel, 3 years, $32 million. Derrick Rose, 3 years, $43 million. I haven't seen anything that suggests any of those are team options. It seems, at least based on the original reporting, that all those guys are actually signed for 3 years. It's not like a 1+1 that they've been trotting out. So like the Knicks are now, I don't want to say locked into this core because those guys on those deals will be tradable. But like this is their, they don't have.
This is their product.
Yeah, this is what they spent their money in. They spent their money on a team that got blasted in the first round, that overachieved in the regular season, and then they got blasted in the first round of the playoffs. I don't like it for them.
I like Fournier. I like the addition of Fournier. I just don't like running everything back to that extent. Like, so here's the thing. Like, some of the contracts in isolation are actually pretty good. Like, I don't mind the Nerlens Noel contract. I don't mind the Alec Burks contract. I think Derrick Rose was overpaid because of his age, but all right, like, put a gun to my head, I could get along with that contract as well. But it's the collectiveness of it. It's the fact that you take those contracts, put them on the same team when you have all the cap space in the world. Like, what you could have done instead of, for example, re-signing Alec Burks, is if you knew that you weren't going to be a player in free agency this year, rent out your cap space, get another asset in, do something else. I mean, he's not going to swing the needle for you in every major direction. Like, he's just not. I like Alec Burks, but he's a complimentary player for a reason. I agree with you. I don't think this is going to drastically improve them at all. I think this is going to... Well, I mean, Fournier is going to improve them. I could see them take a little notch up, but like this is not going to turn them into championship contenders. And I think the hope for the Knicks fan base was, we've overachieved. This is our new normal. So now let's use $50 million to turn ourselves from playoff team into championship contender. That has not happened.
No. Like, I'm looking at FanDuel's odds right now. The Knicks have a plus 5,000 to win the title next year. The Bulls are plus 6,000. The Pacers are plus 8,000. I would put all of those teams right on the same tier. Like, I don't think the Knicks are drastically better than the Bulls or the Pacers right now.
I don't think they're so the Bulls are an unknown product, but the Pacers still have the core from last year together.
Yep.
They have a significantly better head coach now.
Yeah.
So I'm actually shocked that the Pacers are ranked below the Knicks. I don't think that's...
they lost McDermott, I guess, but they re-signed TJ, and they got Torrey Craig on 2 years, $10 million. Like, one of my favorite contracts of free agency so far.
And like losing McDermott isn't really a big issue because they didn't have TJ Warren for all of last year, so he's going to come in and take those minutes anyway. I really like the overall talent level of this Pacers team. Torrey Craig is interesting for that deal. I didn't think he would get that much, but I don't hate it. I think it's solid. Like, he can play two positions. He's defensive oriented. Like, he can come in and play a significant amount of minutes off the bench. They still have some tradable pieces if they want to make a move. Like, this has never been a team that blows things up. I don't think so. It's going to be gradual improvements along those lines. And you have Domantas Sabonis, who's 24, 25, who's only going to get better. I mean, I'm just not out on that team by any stretch. And I'm not saying I'm out on New York, but I think that the Pacers are better. And I don't think that what the Knicks did moved the needle a whole bunch.
Yeah, I think like the Knicks will be in that play-in tier, right? Like, right. So Brooklyn, Milwaukee at the top, then Miami third, probably Philly, Boston, Atlanta 4, 5, 6 in some order, depending on what Philly does with Ben Simmons. So like Knicks, Bulls, Pacers, Wizards, Raptors, they'll be competing for the 5 or the 6 seed at best. But I mean, we'll see. Like, I don't want to judge the Knicks too harshly because I don't think all of those guys will be there for the duration of their contracts.
Yeah.
And, having those mid-tier contracts to trade later, it can be an asset. But we've said that about the Knicks for the last couple of years as well, with all of these guys on 1+1 deals, and they didn't really. I think Marcus Morris.
Yeah, Marcus.
They got a first round pick for it, but they didn't get anything for Bobby Portis. Elfrid Payton. The last couple of years they signed a 1+1, so they haven't like turned these guys into very much. Now they have these guys under contract for longer, so maybe that will incentivize teams to give up more for them because it's not just a 2-month rental. But at the same time, who's paying $14 million a year for Derrick Rose? Like, who's excited to do that?
I mean, the Bulls were in on him, but apparently they just weren't interested in paying him that amount. It seems like. So
I like the Caruso value much more than I do.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, again, I could see why Knicks fans would listen to this and go, well, you're being overly negative because it's the Knicks. I don't think so. Like, I really like the Evan Fournier acquisition. I really do. Like, that's a big one for me. I'm a big Evan Fournier fan. I think he's going to improve their spacing immediately. It's just a lackluster return on the promise of cap space, I think, is the issue. Like, and like, again, these decent contracts, it's great. It's just when you put all those together, what was that team a few years ago when we had that, when we went through the contracts individually? Was it the Pistons or no? I think it might have been the Hornets before like they flipped the roster over. Like, they had just this horrible salary cap management. Like, they were, I think, almost near the tax line, and they had Nicholas Batum, and outside Batum was a bad deal. Like, we went through the list, and everyone was like compensated fairly. It's just the magnitude of the same contracts that just becomes such a convoluted, and I just don't like the salary structure what they did. Maybe they make some trades like you alluded to, and if that's the case, awesome. Like, let's see what they do at the trade deadline. Maybe they're building up to something big. Who knows?
Well, and that, I mean, they might, Damian Lillard, I think, if he requests out, they're going to want to be in on that bidding.
Yes.
But are any of those guys, like maybe Nerlens could be of interest to Portland, but like, is Alec Burks going to be part of the headliner package going back for Damian Lillard to Derrick Rose? Like, I can't imagine Portland wants any of those guys if they're going into a long-term rebuild.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's a long shot.
Yeah. So, yes, I mean, I'm not saying the Knicks are going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. Like, I think they could compete for a top 6 seed in the East still, but I don't think they shouldn't pencil themselves in like, oh, we were a top 4 seed last year. We're just guaranteed to be, like other teams are getting better as well. So I'm nervous. I'm nervous about the Knicks' trajectory.
Yeah. And also, there's that whole thing about year 2 tips, right?
Yeah. That's And with Julius Randle now heading into a contract year, does he? I don't want to say start gunning because he's the lead, the main focal point of that team already. But does that get into the back of his mind of like, I need to show the full range of what I can do, even though. He made like an All-NBA team last year, didn't he? He can probably just do what he did last year, and he's still going to get a big payday next summer.
Right. Well, I guess we'll find out. But ultimately, yeah, I don't have the Knicks as a winner. I don't think retaining talent, especially mid-tier talent, is proof enough of that you can be a successful franchise.
Right. And I mean, I guess the counter argument would be like, who would you rather have had them spend that money on, given the fact this free agent class got so picked over so quickly? And maybe it's less that, but just I don't like the cap minutia thing that we were talking about with the Bulls. Like, could you have used, I don't know if they had, I guess they had non-Bird on Alec Burks. Do they have early Bird or non-Bird on Orleans? Like, could you have used any version of Bird rights that you had on any of these guys to sign them into, I think like Derrick Rose, at least they had early Bird, I want to say. So could you have gotten Derrick Rose down a little bit, use your early Bird rights on him, and preserve your cap space elsewhere to spend on, I don't know, like save a $10 million slot somehow to spend on someone else, whoever that may be.
No, he came over last season as well. So he's only there for 35 games. So it would have to have been 120%, right? But
was he on a 1 or a 2 year deal? Because he got traded, right?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's right. He actually signed with Detroit on a 2 year deal. So you're right. You're right. Yeah. They had early Bird. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So again, it's like not the end of the world. And I'm not saying that there's necessarily a guy they could have fit into that salary range anyway that would have made sense. But these are the types of things where, are you hitting on the margins? I don't think the Knicks hit on the margins.
No, I don't so either.
They did fine, but they didn't do great. And therefore, in comparison to what the Bulls did, the Heat did, the Mavericks did, I can't put them in that list of like clear free agent winners from day one.
Right. I agree.
So we have to go to the Pelicans next, Mort. They lose Lonzo for Sato, Temple, and a second round pick. They are going to work a sign and trade with the Hornets for Devontae Graham, 4 years, $47 million, and they are sending their lotto protected 2022 first round pick back to Charlotte. Love the deal for Charlotte.
I do too. I love the deal for Bulls too.
Yeah, but what are the Pelicans doing?
I have no idea. They basically just flipped, Lonzo Ball and a lottery protected first rounder for the right to pay Devontae Graham, Sato, Tomas Satoransky, a sign and traded Garrett Temple, and a second rounder.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that deal, Bryan, if I'm the Pelicans.
No, nor should you. And I like, given all that we've heard about Zion this offseason, and that Zion seemed to be a big fan of Lonzo Ball and seemed to want them to re-sign him, I just can't help but wonder how this impacts his future with the team, or, his, like, is he happy with the trajectory of the team? We were talking about earlier, like, Zach LaVine should be thrilled that the Bulls seem to know what they're doing. Is Zion looking at David Griffin with that same feeling, or is he looking at David Griffin like Damian Lillard is looking at Neil Olshey right now?
Yeah, so insert sound here of an engine revving up, because that is going to be the Zion media speculation that's going to start in approximately 1 week.
Oh, it already started. Bill Simmons already tweeted something about it last night.
Oh yeah, but I don't follow Bill. I like to follow people who are smart.
Well, yeah, he tweeted. It was actually pretty funny. It was like it made it seem like it was a source report. It was something like, so his agent has tells the Ringer that Zion Williamson is not happy with the current trajectory of the franchise, something like that. But yeah, it's look, they still have cap space, and I think they could still get up to 20-ish million if they renounce Josh Hart. So, do they bring in, like, they're probably they're the team I'm eyeing the most in terms of a Danny Green landing spot. Like, if they could get him, do they bring in DeMar DeRozan? I don't think they should, but, they could. Do they bring in Dennis Schroeder? Jake Fisher mentioned, I know, but like Jake Fisher mentioned that if they get Devontae, they could also get Schroeder, and all of a sudden, it wouldn't make sense because you have.
They could. It wouldn't make sense, but they could.
Well, I mean, because you have Devontae, you now have Sato, you have Kyrie Lewis Jr., you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You know, David Griffin wanted them to play those guys.
Right.
It's really, given that we've heard they're super high on the young kids, it's interesting that they bring in 2 veteran point guards as well, because in theory, that's only going to bury these kids more on the bench. But at the same time, I guess Griffin is clearly feeling the pressure, if nothing else, from these leaks about Zion. We can't miss the playoffs again.
So that's why we move on from one of his best buddies on the team?
I guess so. I don't know. I don't get it.
Look, here's my thinking. There's still plenty of time for the Pelicans to salvage their offseason. Yes. So the reason that we have them in dumb teams right now is only based on yesterday. If they have a larger plan in mind, okay. I still think in isolation, what they did yesterday was extremely short-sighted. I don't understand the logic of what they did, and I think they could have executed what they did yesterday better. So, right. So we can call them a dumb team for at least 24 hours. If they come out and do something tremendous tonight or tomorrow at some other point, we can reevaluate. But from what they did, the way they handled Lonzo, the way they handled the Devontae Graham sign and trade, man, it just looks like skepticism is running amok in New Orleans, and rightly so. I mean, when Mark and I did the live stream on the YouTube channel last night, we legitimately had guys in the comment section going, should David Griffin get fired right now? No, I don't think so, obviously. Yeah. But, I mean, that was the reaction from Pelicans fans. I mean, friends of the podcast, Mason Ginsberg and Shamit Dua, were not enthused about the trades as well.
No, they were not. And I don't hate the price for Devontae Graham. I think, about $12 million a year is pretty fair for him. I guess the question you have to ask yourself is, what do you see Devontae Graham as? Do you see him as your starting point guard, or is he better off as, a high-profile backup point guard? Because
I'll tell you what I think they see, though, because remember who they went for before he left for Miami.
Yeah, Kyle.
They are looking at Devontae as a younger Kyle.
Oof.
No. Okay, so defensively, yeah. Offensively, though, there's merit to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that was circulating around as soon as Devontae signed, was his terrible field goal percentage, but I think we said this on Sunday as well. Grand majority of his shots are coming from 3-point range. So you almost have to throw out his overall field goal percentage and just focus on the 3. And he shoots a high volume of threes pretty efficiently, in the high 30s. Doesn't do a lot in terms of doesn't draw contact, doesn't draw a ton of free throws. So that 2-point percentage is a concern in that regard. It's going to be like Lonzo Redux. You're not going to have the traditional drive to the basket, get fouled, draw 8 free throws a game. That is not Devontae Graham's game. He is just going to be a high volume 3-point shooter. But I will say this, if they are really all in on Point Zion, which it seemed like they were leaning toward at the end of last season, having Devontae in more of a Jamal Murray role could make sense.
Exactly, and that is what the Kyle Lowry effect is. I mean, a guy who can spot up from the attention of others, and that's what they were looking for in Graham. Plus, I mean, we're not even talking about how Brandon Ingram is actually also a decent creator.
Yeah.
So there is that dual creation level there, and if push comes to shove, Devontae Graham in his second year averaged 7.5 assists. He too is a solid playmaker. So you now have 3 guys who can make plays for themselves and others. It is not a question of Devontae Graham. Like you, I think the contract was fine. It was more along the lines of the return for Lonzo and then following that up by giving a first-round draft pick. And I also wonder what the price would have been, the walk-away price for Charlotte, right? Like, if you didn't want to give up the lotto protected first, you may have been able to get away with it if you offered him, what, $16 million per year?
If that, I mean, you have to look at Charlotte with LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and now James Bouknight. And realize they're not going to keep Devontae Graham. Like, I wonder if they could have just given him this offer sheet, not taken. Like, they gave up the first round pick to guarantee that Charlotte wouldn't match.
Yeah.
I wonder if they just gave him this offer sheet, what would have happened? Like, would Charlotte have matched even this amount? Possibly. So maybe you have to get up to 55 million or 60 million, something like that. And maybe they just don't want to risk that. But, you don't want to risk having your cap space tied up for a week, I guess, would be their argument. But yeah, this is another one where it's like, again, the minutia, like, these are minor details and they might not sound like huge glaring mess ups. These are not like giving Timofey Mozgov and Luol Deng, $130 million in the first hour of free agency. We are focusing on smaller details here, but these smaller details matter, and you see it every single year, and mistakes like this add up over time. So and if people don't buy that thinking, Bobby Portis. I'm just gonna say Bobby Portis. Look, this is where if you win on the margins, you can get a guy like Bobby Portis who helps lead you to an NBA championship. Would the Bucks have won the championship without Bobby Portis? You know what? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think it's perfectly reasonable to set aside questions and go, you know what? Would they even have won the championship without him? And lo and behold, they got him for what? What was that deal? What was he paid? Like 3.8 or something? Or was it? I think it was the biannual exception. So like even less. It was like 3.6, I want to say. There you go. Like, again, winning in the margins. That is so huge. So, like, I know that there are people listening and going, nerds. Yeah. And that's fair. But you know what? Nerds win. Yeah, I'm sorry. We brought up Campaign earlier. Like, bringing Campaign on a minimum deal. Does Phoenix make it to the NBA Finals without Campaign to step in when Chris Paul gets hurt against the Lakers in the first round when he gets COVID in the Western Conference Finals? Yeah, no. Do the Clippers make it to the Western Conference Finals without Reggie Jackson, who they brought in on mid deal? Like, you have to just take these types of swings, and most of them will not pan out. That's why these guys are on minimum deals, but some of them do. And if you hit on the ones that do, that's when you end up, like, those guys end up contributing to deep playoff runs. So, did the moves yesterday materially affect the Pelicans' championship odds for next year? No, because the Pelicans weren't going to be championship contenders this year, and they still aren't going to be. Did they even affect their playoff odds? Probably not substantially, because, again, they didn't make the playoffs last year with this core. So, it's more just looking at the value of what came out, what came in. And as you said, would you give up Lonzo in a first for Sato, Temple, and Devontae Graham? No, I don't think he would have done that deal at the trade deadline, so why are you doing it now? Exactly. Well, Bryan, I'm glad you brought that up because, look, I mean, obviously, let's go to a winner here with the San Antonio Spurs, right? That did all the right things. Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate it as much. I understand why people are out on it. I don't totally hate what they did, but a lot of that is to be determined based on what else is still to come. Because as I mentioned, they are one of the few teams still with a lot of cap space. So they signed Doug McDermott, 3-year, $42 million deal. And then Zach Collins, 3 years, $22 million. For McDermott, I get it, right? Like, this is just the price of shooters. Like, they're going to make between $15 and $20 million a year. We saw it with, Duncan Robinson's making 18. Joe Harris is making almost 19. Davis Bertans last year is making 5 years, 80. So that was 16. So, like, this, if you are an elite shooter, this is how much you can expect to make. And for a Spurs team that just does not have a ton of three-point shooting, and Lord knows Greg Popovich has just bemoaned the rise of three-point shooters, he realizes losing Davis Bertans a couple years ago was a big blow to them. So now you're adding Doug McDermott, a career 40.7% three-point shooter. He shot 38.8 last year. Not on super high volume, He only took 4.3 attempts per game in each of the past 2 seasons. But when you get to San Antonio, tell him, all right, I want you to have Devontae Graham's shot profile. I want 70 or 80% of your shot attempts to be threes.
That changes the equation if he is willing to go along with it.
Yeah.
And also, I want you to look at Doug McDermott's 2-point field goal percentage. And then I want you to look at what he did normally in the 2-point field goal percentage category over the course of his career. And I want you to at least consider the word outlier.
Yes, yeah. He shot 64.1 last year on 5.7 attempts per game. He had never shot above 57% before, and never, mostly on like 3 or 4 2-point attempts per game.
Yes. So there's a part of me here that goes, how much did they pay him solely for his very, very hot season that he just came through?
Mm-hmm.
Which I could be worried about, because if you're getting this version, fine, absolutely fine, that will work out for you. But if you're getting last year's version, like the 2019-2020 version, that's not necessarily worth that type of money.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, the concern is that he has started 43 games in his NBA career. You just gave him $14 million. Like, that's a starting player salary. So who are you moving to the bench? Are you moving Keldon Johnson? Are you bumping Devin Vassell? Like, are you not giving him a chance to become a starter?
Right.
You know, how does that wing rotation shake out for San Antonio will be something I'm curious to see. But like I understand the concerns with this deal. I don't think I hated it as much as most of Twitter. The Zach Collins one I think is the bigger risk. 3 years, $22 million. We'll see. I mean, again, we don't know full details here. Maybe only part of it is guaranteed, or maybe they have some protection in case of injuries, because that's the big concern with Zach Collins. He's already had a couple ankle injuries. He underwent surgery again, I think earlier this year. So we don't even know if he's going to be ready for the start of the regular season. But if he stays healthy, which is obviously an enormous if with him, but if he stays healthy, getting him at $7 million a year and locking him in for 3 years could actually be decent value.
Right.
Just, again, obviously a huge if. Yeah,
I would say I thought it was the wrong Collins that they brought in.
Yeah, I know they've been linked to John Collins, and I don't know, the 14 and 7. So I think they should still have 30 million-ish in cap space, so they could still
which they shouldn't use on John Collins, but they should use a chunk of it. Yeah,
right. But like they could still throw a big offer sheet his way.
Yeah, they could. I mean, I think more so with the Spurs, it's because it's also right on the heels of a draft that Spurs fans looked at as uninspiring, where it felt like they reached for guys at both their spots. So, like, overall, the offseason has been a little bit rough so far for Spurs fans. I think they were hoping for a splash. I mean, I think that's what the big hope was. Like, let's get a big-ass piece in here who can become the de facto head of the franchise. Because right now, who the hell is that?
DeJounte Murray, I guess.
Who they're apparently shopping.
Right. Well, and this is, again, not to hammer the minutia point too heavily here, but if they weren't planning on re-signing any of DeMar DeRozan, Patty Mills, or Rudy Gay, and none of those guys have signed elsewhere, to my knowledge, so we'll see what happens if they can orchestrate sign and trades with any of them. This equation changes, but if they were planning to let all 3 guys walk, why not trade them at the deadline and get something, even if it's as insignificant as a second-round pick? It is better to get something for them than that. Like, if you could have traded them for another expiring in a second, cool, good. That's like, at least you're getting something in return. But instead, okay, you've got $50 million in cap space. The returns so far have not been, super inspiring. Like, there's nothing about this Spurs team that makes me think they're going to be even in the play-in conversation at this point.
Yeah, I'm a hard pressed when it comes to Pop, but you know what? I think I'm with you on this one. I think I'm sure they're going to overachieve as per usual, but I mean, I just don't know what they have. Maybe this is actually the year that they just go all in on, for example, Kelton Johnson, Dejounte Murray. Hopefully they don't trade his ass, and they just go, you know what, guys, run the show. There's no LaMarcus Aldridge, there's no DeMar DeRozan, there's no Rudy Gay, there's no Pat Mills. Just go nuts, young kids. Go nuts.
I wouldn't hate that.
I would like that. I would like to see Dejounte Murray, Derek White, who's also old now. He is.
Yeah. Old being like 27.
But like what? When he's gonna enter his fourth year, right? Or yeah, right?
I think
fifth. All right, but still fifth year. All right. Well, still though, I mean, he's old for a player at that point in time. Yeah, you're right. Fifth year, still, and he's 27. Good lord. I just want to see them unleash the kids.
It makes me wonder, and this is a conversation to have for a different day, but now that a lot of the big names are off the market, I think now is when we'll start to see some trade talks pick back up again, because now there are going to be teams that either didn't get their top targets or have cap space and have no one to spend it on. Like the Spurs have always been the team that I've circled in the who could be a sleeper for Ben Simmons, and seeing them add a shooter like Doug McDermott, I'm just wondering if they're gearing up for a bigger trade to some, whether it's Simmons or someone else, I don't know, but
I mean, sure, I don't know what the deal would be that Philly would find interesting on that part. I think Derek White is good, absolutely, but yeah, I don't know what the trade parameters will be. But we can return to Ben Simmons. We have so much more to go through. But absolutely, I think you might be onto something. If of course the Spurs are looking at it and going, we believe in that gamble, which really that's what it all boils down to with Ben Simmons. A team has to believe that when he gets there, he can become a better version of what he is right now.
And that's part of the problem with the perceived reach of Primo at 12 too, because that if the Spurs were trying to do a big package for Ben or someone else, DeJounte, Vassell, and 12 sounds a lot better than DeJounte, Vassell, and Josh Primo now. So
that sounds so harsh when he hasn't played a minute, but I
know, but what I'm saying, right? 12 could have been Moses Moody.
Yeah, it could.
Or Corey Kispert, or Trey Murphy.
Yep.
Or Chris Duarte if you wanted a win now guy. There were so many guys on the board who I think.
Oh man, you're not even mentioning my guy.
Senjun as well.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of options on the board at 12 that I think teams would have been more inclined to want in a trade.
Yeah.
I just don't think Josh Primo does anything for a team unless they're also rebuilding.
I would agree.